She called me embarrassing, not in a joking teenage way, not with a smirk or a giggle or the kind of eye roll that comes with love tucked beneath the sarcasm. No, she said it like she meant it, like I was a stain on her life she couldn't scrub out fast enough. "Can you not talk so much?" she hissed through clenched teeth as we stood in line at the coffee shop she dragged me to, her voice low enough to be sharp, but not so loud as to draw attention. "It's embarrassing." I blinked at her, unsure if I'd heard right. "Excuse me?" I asked, holding the door open for the girl behind us, who smiled and said, "Thank you." My granddaughter didn't smile, didn't say anything, just crossed her arms and looked at the floor like the sound of my voice was something she was trying to outlast. That's when I realized it wasn't the moment that hurt the most. It was the fact that she didn't even feel bad about it. Maya used to adore me. I was the one who rocked her to sleep when my daughter was too exhausted to keep going. I built her a treehouse with my own two hands, one summer when the heat made my vision blur, and the boards stuck to my skin. I stayed up all night sewing her Halloween costume when she wanted to be something no store carried. A fire-breathing ballerina, whatever that meant. And now I was an embarrassment, a relic from another time she didn't want to be associated with. Something to be tolerated, if necessary, hidden, if possible. We sat at a small corner table after ordering. Well, she sat. I stood for a moment too long, trying to figure out whether I should still be there. Eventually, I lowered myself into the seat across from her, slow and stiff, my knees giving me hell as they always did. "What?" she said, not even looking up from her phone. She scrolled, thumb moving like a machine. "Nothing," I said, folding my hands in my lap. "Just wondering when you stopped seeing me." That got her attention, but not the kind I wanted. She finally looked up, sighed dramatically, and said, "Grandpa, please don't make this a whole thing. I'm just tired, okay?" "Tired of me?" I asked, and she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck behind her skull. "God, this is exactly what I mean. You always make it emotional. Like, why can't we just sit here and have coffee without you turning it into a therapy session?" I didn't answer. I didn't even flinch, because somewhere in that moment, something inside me turned to glass. Not shattered. Not yet. But brittle. Fragile. "Ready?" I nodded, took a sip of my plain black coffee. It burned going down, but I didn't show it. She went back to scrolling, tapping furiously, like the world inside her phone was the only one that deserved her attention. I watched her for a minute. The way her lip curled when something annoyed her, the quick breath she took before typing. She used to sit on my lap and ask me to tell her stories about the war, about her mother when she was little, about what I'd be like when I was 100 years old. "Will you still have your mustache?" she once asked, touching my face with those small, sticky fingers that smelled like strawberries and Play-Doh. I would have given anything to hear that voice again. But the girl across from me now, she wasn't that child anymore. And I wasn't her hero. I was just background noise. When we got back to the house, my house, though no one ever said it like that, she barely said goodbye before heading upstairs. She didn't offer to help me carry the grocery bag. Didn't ask if I needed anything. Just disappeared into her room, door slamming shut behind her like punctuation. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the paper bag on the counter. Eggs, milk, a loaf of bread. I'd bought her the almond milk she liked, the expensive kind. I wasn't sure if I'd done it to be nice, or just to remind myself I still remembered what she cared about. I sat at the table and stared out the window at the backyard, where her treehouse used to be. It was gone now, dismantled after years of rot and disuse. But I could still see it in my head. The faded flag we'd hung, the little mailbox she insisted on nailing to the trunk, just in case fairies wanted to write her. Funny how time warps everything. One minute you're pushing a child on a swing, listening to their laugh carry across the yard like music, and the next, you're sitting alone, being told you're embarrassing for existing. My daughter Clara came home later that evening. She was always careful around me. Not cruel like Maya had become, but polite in a way that felt distant, calculated. "Hey, Dad," she said, setting down her purse and flipping through the mail. "Maya said you two went out today." "We did," I said, not looking up from the crossword puzzle I wasn't really working on. "Everything okay?" she asked, in that tone that meant she was hoping I'd just say yes and move on. "Fine," I said. "She didn't enjoy the coffee much." Clara gave a thin smile. "She's just stressed about school stuff. She didn't mean anything by it." I nodded, because that's what I always did, nodded, smiled, swallowed it. Like it was my job to absorb the tension, so the rest of them could keep moving. But that night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the usual aches or the way the wind knocked the loose shutter outside my window. I didn't sleep because I couldn't stop hearing that word. Embarrassing. Not tired, not old, not grumpy. Embarrassing. Like I was a clown who'd overstayed his welcome at a child's party. The next morning, I opened the drawer in the hallway desk, where I kept my financial paperwork. It was organized. Always had been. I'd handled the household finances since Clara was a toddler, back when her mother was alive and we still took weekend drives to the coast for no reason at all. I pulled out the folder marked Maya, college fund. It was thick. Years of deposits, compound interest, a whole future waiting for her, wrapped in numbers and careful planning. I ran my hand over the folder slowly. I had started it the day she was born. Even bought a silver piggy bank shaped like a rocket ship to match it. "You're going to the moon, baby girl," I'd said to her sleeping face in the hospital room. But now she wouldn't even look me in the eye unless she needed a ride or a payment made. I closed the folder and carried it into the living room, turned on the lamp, sat in my chair, and stared at it like it was some kind of relic from a life I used to live. I didn't make a decision that night, but I felt something starting. Something slow, steady, inevitable. A crack forming in the glass. There was a time when Maya couldn't fall asleep unless she was curled up on my chest, her tiny hand gripping the collar of my old flannel shirt, like it anchored her to the planet. Back then, she thought I could do anything. I was the one who chased monsters out from under her bed, who made her laugh when her goldfish died, who taught her how to ride a bike by holding on for just long enough and then letting go. I can still see her wobbling down the driveway, shrieking with joy, not realizing I'd already let go. That was the magic of it. She believed I'd always be there, and I believed I always would be too. When her father walked out, she was only 5. I remember the day like a bruise that never faded. Clara had come home shaking, her voice brittle, clutching Maya so tightly, you'd think she was afraid the child might vanish too. He'd left a note, that was all. No explanations, no goodbyes. Just a note and the keys on the table. Clara fell apart in ways that only mothers do. Quiet sobs behind bathroom doors. Distant stares into empty cereal boxes. I stepped in, not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear to watch my daughter suffer alone. And Maya. Well, she started calling me Papa Dad that week. Said I had to be both now. Every day became a performance of stability. I woke early, made breakfast, packed lunches, helped Maya with homework, while Clara worked double shifts at the clinic. I pretended I wasn't tired. I pretended my joints didn't scream. I pretended my own grief hadn't been quietly living in my chest since my wife died 6 years before. Maria would have known what to say to Clara. She would have known how to explain heartbreak to a 5-year-old. All I could do was show up, again and again, until my presence became a constant, more reliable than the sun. We started a tradition. Saturday mornings were ours. Pancakes, then cartoons, then trips to the library, where Maya would insist we check out at least one book, with magic. She always chose a quiet corner, climbed onto my lap, and whispered the stories out loud to me, as if reading them herself made her powerful. Sometimes she'd look up and say, "When I grow up, I'm going to be just like you, Papa." I'd smile, run my hand through her hair, and say, "No, sweetheart, you'll be even better." When she turned 10, she asked me if we were rich. I laughed and told her, "We're rich in love and poor in everything else." But even then, I had already started the fund. I knew what education would cost by the time she was grown. And I didn't want Clara to worry. I didn't want Maya to start life under a mountain of debt. So I chipped in every month, like clockwork, tucking away bits from my pension, from the odd handyman jobs I still did around the neighborhood. I skipped vacations, I cut coupons, I sold my truck, and walked for 2 years. All for a dream that didn't belong to me, but felt like it did. The older Maya got, the more she sparkled. She was smart, articulate, good with people. Teachers adored her. She was voted class representative every year in middle school. I remember sitting in the front row of her school plays, clapping like a lunatic when she took a bow, no matter how small the part. I once saw her argue down a school principal who accused her of skipping detention. Turns out she was in the nurse's office, helping another girl who'd passed out. Maya had a fire in her, and I was proud of it. Proud of her. Proud of everything she was becoming. And she loved me back. I know she did. When she got her first period, it was me she told, through tears and panic, while Clara was out of town for a conference. I went to the store, bought every box on the shelf because I didn't know which kind she needed, and when she laughed at the pile, I laughed with her. When she got accepted to the state honors program, I was the one she called first. "Papa, we did it!" she yelled into the phone. "We!" That one word filled my chest like it hadn't in years, but something shifted when she turned 16. At first, it was subtle. A slight impatience when I mispronounced a pop star's name. A wince when I offered to walk her into the school building. She still hugged me, still thanked me, but only when we were alone. In public, I became Grandpa, said quickly and with the kind of edge that warned people not to ask questions. The first time she told me not to wait outside the mall for her, I thought she was trying to be independent. The third time, I started to feel like I wasn't welcome. I told myself it was a phase. Teenagers are messy, self-absorbed, hormonal whirlwinds of emotion. I'd raised one before, but Clara was never cruel, not even at her worst. Maya, on the other hand, started treating me like an optional accessory, a piece of furniture with opinions, and Clara. She was too tired to see it, or maybe too afraid to confront it. "It's just a phase, Dad," she said, whenever I brought it up. "She's got a lot on her plate. Give her space." I gave her space. I gave her silence. I gave her the benefit of every doubt, every eye roll, every backhanded comment about how old people just don't get it. But deep down, I started to feel the cracks widening. I began to dread our outings, began hesitating before speaking. I stopped telling stories unless I was asked. I stopped offering advice unless it was begged for. I told myself that love was patient, and that patience meant waiting on the porch, even if no one asked you to come inside. One afternoon, I caught her in the backyard, laughing with her friends. I waved from the window. She saw me, didn't wave back. Instead, she turned to the group and said something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, they all laughed. Not in a kind way. The laughter had sharp corners. I went to bed early that night, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to disappear for a few hours. I started keeping track of the moments, of the tone, of the vanishing thanks. She took the rides, the money, the gifts, but she stopped offering her heart. I found her college essay on the printer one night. She hadn't asked me to read it. I read it anyway. 4 pages about the influence of her mother, her teachers, and her personal resilience. Not a single mention of me. Not one. I cried that night, not loudly. Just a slow, steady leak I couldn't plug. But I still told myself it was okay. That her success was enough. That I didn't need the credit, just the joy of seeing her soar. That's what love does. It excuses. It rationalizes. It puts a pillow over the mouth of pain and calls it mercy. Until one day, you can't breathe anymore. And then someone looks you in the eye and says you're embarrassing. And you realize they haven't just forgotten what you've done. They've erased who you are. There's a moment in every relationship, whether it's romantic, parental, or in my case, the bond between grandfather and granddaughter, where something quietly snaps. Not loud, not sudden, just a soft, imperceptible shift. Like the slow warping of wood under pressure. You don't hear it until one day the door doesn't close the way it used to. That day came for me over burnt coffee and silence. She walked past me again without a word. Maya, the girl who used to run into my arms with peanut butter on her face and sticky hands that clung to my shirt like I was her whole world. She didn't even look at me now, not unless she needed something. Not unless there was a problem I could fix. That morning, I had made breakfast. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs, toast, and sliced fruit. The way I used to when Clara was young. I even remembered to cut the strawberries the way Maya liked, little heart shapes, just like when she was 6 and thought every meal should come with a story. She didn't say thank you, didn't look at the plate. She just muttered something about needing to study and took her coffee into her room. No thanks, no smile, no recognition, just air. Like I didn't exist. I sat at the table for a long time after she left. The silence of an empty kitchen hits different when you're older. It wraps around you, not heavy but invasive, like it wants to remind you how easy it is to be forgotten. And that's when it started. Not the anger, that would come later. No, what I felt in that moment was something colder, something harder, a realization. I had spent the better part of 2 decades giving everything I had, my time, my energy, my savings, my affection, to someone who now saw me as an inconvenience, an afterthought, a fixture in the background of her life she barely noticed. I didn't want to be bitter, but I also didn't want to be a fool. So I opened the drawer in my desk and pulled out the folder labeled Maya, College Fund. I'd put the label on myself, in careful block letters, back when she was only 8 years old and still calling me Papa Bear. The folder was thick now, swollen with account statements, handwritten notes, deposit slips. It was a story. Really. A love story told in numbers. Every month I'd scrape together something, anything. Even during the rough years, when my pension didn't go far and the roof leaked. Even then, I kept contributing. I sat with it for an hour before doing anything, just looking at it, letting the weight of it settle on me. Then I picked up the phone. I didn't speak to a teller. I asked for a financial advisor, told them I needed to make changes, big ones. Over the next few days, I quietly transferred the funds, moved everything into a separate account under my name only. Not because I planned to spend it, I didn't, but because I needed to know that I could still make decisions that mattered, that I could still protect myself. That week, Maya mentioned the deposit deadline. I nodded, said I'd look into it, but I didn't. And when she came home, red-faced and frantic, saying the bursar's office never received payment, I just sipped my tea. Papa, the school says the account never cleared. I looked up from my paper. That's odd. She blinked, confused. I reminded you like 5 times. I know, I said calmly. Then why didn't you send it? I folded the paper. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About what? She said, her voice sharp, defensive. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch just enough to make her squirm. I think, I said slowly, that perhaps I've been giving too much without asking whether it's deserved. Her face twisted. You're seriously going to sabotage my future because of a bad mood? That's not what this is, I said, and you know it. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to change my mind, waiting for me to apologize. But I didn't. She stormed out, slammed the door. Later, Clara came in, looking exhausted. What happened this time? I shrugged. She's upset about the fund. She said you're pulling it. Please tell me that's not true. I looked at my daughter, my only child, and saw in her the same tired patterns, the same reflex to smooth things over instead of facing what was broken. I'm reassessing, I said. I've been reassessing a lot lately. Clara sighed. Dad, you raised her. You were her second parent. Don't you want to see her succeed? Of course I do, I said. But I want her to understand that success isn't a gift. It's built on respect, and I haven't felt respected in a very long time. She's young. They don't always know how to. She's almost 18, I cut in. Old enough to know better. Old enough to recognize love when it's right in front of her. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't argue after that. I think part of her knew I was right. In the days that followed, things got quieter. Maya stayed out later, avoided me at meals. I didn't mind. I found a strange sort of peace in the silence. I read more, took walks, even started painting again, something I hadn't done since Maria died. I painted landscapes mostly. Mountains, empty benches, skies at dusk. And I began to think about legacy. Not money, not college funds, real legacy. What we leave behind in people's hearts, in their memories. That's when I wrote the new letter. It wasn't a will, not yet, but it was a placeholder, a possibility. I wrote down what I wanted to say, what I needed Maya to understand, that love without gratitude becomes expectation, that giving without acknowledgement becomes depletion, that I would no longer pour from a cup she refused to refill. Then I called Luis. Luis, the mailman. He showed up every day with the same smile, the same respectful nod, the same genuine warmth. He always asked how I was, not out of politeness, but out of real interest. One day I asked him to come in for coffee. He looked surprised. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not, I said. You're being appreciated. We sat in the kitchen and talked about his kids, his dreams. He told me his oldest wanted to study engineering, but didn't think they could afford it. I didn't say anything right then, but I felt something unlock inside me, a door I hadn't realized had closed. Here was someone who didn't expect anything from me. And yet, if I gave him something, he would treat it like the gift it was. Not a transaction, not entitlement, just honest gratitude. That night, I added his name to a document I kept in the back of my filing cabinet. No one knew about it. Not yet. But it was real. And it was mine to change. Maya found out 2 weeks later. She overheard Clara and me talking in the kitchen. I hadn't meant for her to hear, but I also didn't flinch when she did. "You're giving it to the mailman," she said, voice shrill with disbelief. "I'm giving it to someone who knows what appreciation looks like." "But he's not family." "Neither," I said, "is someone who sees me as an embarrassment." She cried that night, slammed doors, accused me of betrayal, of being manipulative, of ruining her future. I didn't argue, I just listened. And when she was done, I said the only thing I had left to say. "You thought the money was yours? But it never was. It was mine. My gift. My choice. And gifts can be revoked when the heart that gave them is broken." She left the room in silence, and for the first time in months, I felt whole. The day Maya found out the money was gone was not the day the world ended. But for her, it might have felt like it. She walked into the kitchen, phone clutched in one hand, eyes wide with panic and disbelief. Her voice trembled even before the first word came out. "Papa," she said, "the college account, it's empty." I was at the table, poring over my morning crossword, sipping coffee. I didn't look up right away. Not to be cruel, just to let the silence teach her something I never could. That not all consequences arrive with a siren. Some come as whispers, soft and unflinching. When I finally looked at her, I saw the storm gathering behind her eyes. Anger, confusion, pride, all fighting for the front seat. "It's not empty," I said calmly. "It's just no longer allocated to you." Her jaw dropped. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said, folding the paper, "that the money I saved for college is still there. It just doesn't have your name on it anymore." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You took it back?" "Yes. You can't do that." "I already did." She made a choking sound, halfway between a laugh and a scoff. "You're joking, right? This is just some punishment thing. I get it, okay? I've been a brat. I've been disrespectful. But this? You're going to ruin my life over a few months of attitude?" I tilted my head slightly. "Ruin your life? Maya number. I gave you 17 years of love, support, investment, emotional, financial, and otherwise. If your future depends on my money, it was never really your future to begin with. It was borrowed." "You don't mean this," she said, voice cracking now. "You can't mean this." "I do," I said, "and I can." She sat down hard in the chair across from me, mouth working, but no words coming out. Her face flushed red. The first tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't rush to console her. I didn't reach out. I let her sit in the truth, not as a punishment, but as a necessary consequence. For the first time in years, Maya had to face herself, without the safety net I'd always extended beneath her. "Is it gone?" she whispered. "Like, spent?" "No," I said. But it's no longer yours to count on. She blinked. So, who gets it? I didn't answer. She leaned forward, suspicion creeping in. Wait, wait. Is this about that guy? The mailman? I said nothing. Her eyes widened in horror. Are you serious? You gave my college fund to the mailman? It was never yours, I repeated. It was mine. And I gave it to someone who sees me. Someone who says thank you. Someone who would treat a gift like a blessing, not a baseline. But he's not family. And what are you, Maya? I said, my voice soft but sharp. What does family mean when you roll your eyes at me in public? When you call me embarrassing? When you treat me like furniture in my own home? I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant it every time you said it. Every time you didn't say thank you. Every time you walked past me without a glance. I asked for so little, Maya. Respect. A little warmth. You gave me attitude, entitlement, silence. Her hands trembled in her lap. I didn't know you were keeping score. I wasn't, I said. Not at first, but after 17 years of being the steady ground beneath your feet, I started to wonder what would happen if I stepped aside. So I did, and this is what it looks like. She stood suddenly, knocking over the chair. You've changed. I looked up at her. Number, I just stopped letting you treat me like I hadn't. She left the room, and I heard her crying in the hallway. Not the tantrum crying of a child denied a toy, but the stunned sobbing of someone who thought the world would always bend for them, only to find it had teeth. Later that evening, Clara came into my room. She's devastated, she said. Not accusatory, just tired. I know. I've never seen her cry like that. I have, I said. When she was 5, and her father left, I was the one who held her, while you cried in the bedroom. Clara sat down across from me. You've always been there for her. I was. She nodded, slowly. Why, Luis? I took a breath. Because he sees me. Because he cares, without being asked to. Because he brings kindness into this house with every letter. Because he never made me feel like I was a burden just for existing. You're not a burden, she whispered. But she made me feel like one, I said. Day after day, and I enabled it. I smiled. I cooked. I paid. I funded her entire adolescence with the quiet hope that someday she'd look back and say, he mattered. And when she called me embarrassing, not in jest, but with shame, I realized I had failed. Not as a provider, but as a person who thought love would always be enough. Clara was silent for a long time. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for. Is it really too late? I looked down at my hands. The same hands that once held Maya's tiny fingers, that once pushed her on swings and wiped her tears and fixed her broken bicycle chain in the rain. That's up to her, I said, and I meant it. Because the money wasn't the point. It was never about the fund. It was about what it represented. Love, yes, but also dignity, self-worth, boundaries. If Maya wanted to earn back more than money, she'd have to start with those things. Maya didn't come out of her room for the rest of that night. I heard her pacing, heard the buzz of her phone, the muffled sobs she tried to hide with pillows. I didn't go to her. I didn't knock. Not because I was being cruel, but because I'd realized something crucial. She needed to sit with her feelings. She needed to understand what it meant to be without something she assumed was hers forever. Only then could growth begin. The next morning, there was no sound of her coffee cup clinking in the kitchen, no footsteps rushing to the door to meet her ride. When I eventually shuffled into the kitchen, I found her sitting at the table, hair messy, eyes puffy, still in her pajamas. "Morning," I said simply. She looked up slowly. "I didn't sleep." "I know," I said, pouring my coffee. "It's a hard thing, losing something that was never truly guaranteed." There was a long pause. Then she spoke quietly, with the first hint of something real. "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything at first. Let it breathe. "I mean it," she said again. "I didn't realize I'd made you feel that way. I don't know, I just thought you'd always be there." "That's the thing about love, Maya," I said. "When it's good, it feels eternal. But when it's taken for granted, it learns to retreat. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." She blinked, and I saw the pain in her eyes. This wasn't manipulation. This wasn't a teenager trying to win back her tuition. This was something else. The slow and painful awakening to the damage her actions had caused. "You always did everything for me," she said. "And I guess I just assumed, like it was your job or something. I didn't think about how that felt, or how it might wear you down." I sat across from her, hands wrapped around my warm mug. "It did wear me down. I was tired of being treated like wallpaper, present, but invisible." She nodded. "I deserve this. I know that." I studied her face. The stubbornness had softened. The entitlement had cracked. What sat across from me now wasn't a spoiled teenager demanding her future back. It was a young woman learning how to apologize. "What happens now?" she asked. "That's up to you." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "The fund isn't gone. It's not spent. But it's no longer a promise. If you want my support, the kind that goes deeper than money, then you have to earn it. Not with grades, not with achievements, with how you treat the people who show up for you." She nodded slowly. "I want to do better." "Then start by showing up. Not for college forms, not for tuition deadlines. Show up in this kitchen, at this table. Ask me about my day. Sit with me during my shows, even if they're boring. Treat me like I matter outside of what I give." She smiled faintly. "I think I can do that." "I know you can," I said. There was no dramatic hug, no swelling music. Just the beginning of something better. The next week, she joined me in the garden, asked about the plants, helped me repot the basil. One night, she watched Jeopardy! With me and even cheered when I beat the contestant on Final Clue. Slowly she came back, not as the child who needed everything, but as the woman who wanted to learn what it meant to give back. As for Luis, well, he still gets his cookies at Christmas, still shovels the sidewalk without being asked, still asks about my joints on cold mornings. But the college fund? It's in a new folder now. Still mine, still under my name, but no longer holding resentment. It's just possibility, because revenge doesn't always have to be fire and fury. Sometimes it's simply the act of reclaiming your worth and watching as the people who lost sight of it finally begin to see you again. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, like dawn light through a half-drawn curtain. Soft, steady, and barely noticeable, until you realize the whole room has changed. After everything, the confrontation, the decision, the fallout, the house felt quieter, but not with that bitter silence I'd grown used to. No, this was different. This silence had space in it, room to breathe, room to grow, room for both of us to start again, not because we had to, but because we chose to. Maya didn't fix things overnight. That would have been too easy and too hollow. No, she took the long road, and I respected her more for that than I ever had before. The morning after our kitchen talk, she didn't run out of the house with earbuds in. She sat with me at the table, ate a piece of toast, asked if I needed anything from the store. I told her no, but I saw the effort in her question. That tiny gesture meant more to me than any college acceptance letter ever could. She didn't apologize again, not in words, but she began to apologize in action. She brought me tea during my afternoon shows, listened when I told a story she'd already heard 10 times, didn't roll her eyes, didn't sigh, just smiled and said, "You've told me this one before, but tell it again." And that was healing. One afternoon I came home from a walk and found her organizing the photo albums. The old ones. The ones buried in the hall closet behind a stack of unused Christmas lights and half-empty puzzles. "What are you doing with those?" I asked. She looked up from the pile. "I wanted to see more of her," she said. "Grandma." I sat down next to her, and for an hour we flipped through decades. Maya asked questions I never thought she'd care about my wedding day, the old house we used to live in, how I proposed. And when I got to the photo of baby Clara in the hospital, Maya teared up. "You've been holding this family together for so long," she said. "And I never really saw that before." I didn't say anything, just squeezed her hand gently. That was enough. Over the next few weeks, something began to shift between us. Not a return to the old dynamic, that was gone, but the emergence of a new one, a better one. One built not on dependency, but on respect. She still had no idea whether I'd ever give her the college fund, and that was the point. The uncertainty forced her to look past the money and into the heart of what mattered. Then came the day she brought me a letter. We were in the backyard. She'd started gardening with me, asking questions about soil and sunlight and what made basil thrive. She came outside holding a single sheet of paper. "I want you to read this," she said. "And I want you to know it's not for the money. It's just something I need to say." It was a letter of gratitude. Not a grand performance, just one page. Typed but signed by hand. She listed moments, little ones, that she remembered. Things I didn't think had even registered with her. The way I waited in the rain after her first school dance. The time I drove across town to bring her a book she left at home. The way I hugged her after her father left. She remembered it all. It had just taken time, and a jolt of loss, for her to realize how deep it went. At the bottom of the page was a single sentence. "You never owed me anything, and yet you gave me everything. I see that now." I folded the paper, tucked it into my shirt pocket, and nodded. She didn't ask about the money. Not that day, not that week. She didn't bring it up again for over a month. When she finally did, it was in passing. We were washing dishes together. A new tradition she'd taken up without being asked. "Have you decided what you'll do with the college fund?" she asked softly, not looking up. I wiped a plate slowly. "I have." She waited. I could see her heart thudding in her chest, though she tried to hide it. "I'm not giving it to Luis," I said. She looked surprised. "Oh, why?" "Because he didn't ask for it, and because I think I found someone else who might know what to do with it now." Her eyes met mine, cautious, hopeful. I've updated the paperwork, I said. It's yours again. But with one condition. She nodded, waiting. You pay it forward someday. Not with money. With your presence. With your attention. You be someone's anchor. The way I tried to be for you. Tears welled up. She nodded again. Deal, she whispered. In the months that followed, our relationship grew into something stronger than it had ever been. Not built on obligation, not weighed down by unspoken debts. Just two people, from different generations, choosing to keep showing up. When she left for college, I drove her. She didn't ask for money, didn't ask me to carry her bags. She just held my hand when we reached campus and said, "You're the reason I got here." I didn't cry then. I waited until I got home. Until I sat on the porch and saw the empty space where her car used to be. But they weren't sad tears. They were the tears of a man who had finally been seen. She still calls me. Every Sunday. Sometimes about school. Sometimes just to talk. And every once in a while she says, "I love you, Papa. Thank you. I don't need anything more than that. Not the money. Not even the apology. Just that simple truth. That love, when honored, comes back around. Not always when we want it. Not always in the form we expect. But it returns. Soft as a second chance. Strong as a granddaughter who finally understood what her grandfather was worth.